If someone, whether it's a blood relative, a lifelong friend, or even the very person who once raised you makes one of the 7 requests we're about to uncover, you need to wake up. No defending yourself, no hesitation, and absolutely no guilt. Because when someone demands that you trade your peace, your time, your emotions, or even your dignity just to keep them happy, that's not love. That's manipulation. What may seem like small requests are actually slow, dripping poison seeping into your life bit by bit, making you feel guilty every time you say no, and gradually destroying the core values you've spent a lifetime building. You've already sacrificed enough. You've stayed silent to keep the peace. You've stepped back to avoid conflict. But at this point, if someone still dares to expect you to carry burdens that aren't yours, spend money like you're a bank, or abandon who you are just to make them comfortable, you don't owe them an explanation. You owe yourself self-respect. This video won't sugarcoat the truth. It won't comfort. It's a wake-up call, direct and unapologetic, for anyone who's spent too long playing the role of the one who always endures. We're going to expose every type of toxic demand that hides behind the mask of family, loyalty, and sacrifice. If you've ever felt like you had to please others just to keep the peace, like you had to hold everything together while silencing your own needs, then this might be more than just a video. This might be the wake-up call you've been waiting for. And if you believe that peace is worth protecting at all costs, then hit that subscribe button now. Because here you'll learn how to stand your ground, set firm boundaries, and reclaim the life that's rightfully yours. 1. When they expect you to take responsibility for what isn't yours. This is the first sign and one of the most dangerous traps. When someone comes to you not for advice, not for empathy, but to dump a responsibility that was never yours to begin with, you need to pause. Because that's no longer a request. That's an abuse of your kindness. It often starts gently. Can you help me with this? Just this one time. I don't know who else to turn to but you. So you say yes, thinking you're helping someone in need. But then it happens again and again. And before you know it, you've become the foundation that everyone leans on, yet no one stops to ask if you're tired. And here's the painful truth. The people you're trying to rescue don't actually want to stand on their own. They've gotten used to you cleaning up their messes. They've gotten used to you showing up every time things fall apart. They've learned that all it takes is a little whining and you'll carry their burden without hesitation. But you are not a life raft. You weren't born to carry the weight of people who refuse to grow up. You've come far enough and suffered long enough to know this. Life is not about being a bridge others walk on, only to leave you behind. Ask yourself, why are you always the one who steps in? Why are you paying for mistakes you didn't make? And most importantly, who's going to save you when you finally collapse? Some people will call it family, but no real family doesn't manipulate. Some will guilt trip you for saying no. But don't let anyone confuse your kindness with obligation. You are not selfish for setting boundaries. You are not cold-hearted for refusing to carry what was never yours. In fact, you're saving yourself before it's too late. Because if you keep shouldering burdens that don't belong to you, one day you'll break silently, alone, and unacknowledged by those who never really cared how you felt. Remember, responsibility is something you choose, not something that's forced on you. And if someone treats your sacrifice as a given, then it's time to cut them off. 2. When they ask to borrow money but never pay it back. This isn't just about money. This is about broken trust, stolen peace, and relationships that crumble under the weight of promises never kept. Because when someone asks to borrow money, they're not just taking a financial loan. They're putting you in a tough spot, caught between compassion and your personal boundaries. And if that person is family, the pressure is 10 times heavier. At first, it sounds reasonable. I just need a few hundred to get by. I promise I'll pay you back next month. Right now, you're the only one I can count on. But you know how this story goes. The money disappears instantly, and the promise floats forever in limbo. And then comes the real cost. You avoid calling them because you don't want to offend. You hesitate to bring up the debt, afraid of seeming petty. You begin to feel trapped in a relationship where your kindness is exploited and your silence mistaken for consent. And here's the cruel twist. You, the one who helped without asking for anything in return, end up being labeled as stingy or selfish the moment you say no. They forget how much you've already given. All they see is your refusal now, and suddenly you're the bad guy. Wake up. Kindness does not mean becoming someone's ATM. Love does not mean sacrificing your financial security to bail out someone else's poor decisions. Think about it. You spend your whole life saving, planning, preparing for emergencies or retirement. Then one desperate request wipes it away, and the price isn't just money. It's long-lasting anxiety, disappointment, and emotional scars. And the most painful part. You can always earn money back, but broken trust, that's not so easy to rebuild. So if someone only reaches out when they need something, if their presence in your life is always tied to a request, if you're always paying the price for their mistakes, then stop. Don't let your compassion make you the victim of your own story. Because help only means something when it comes with respect. Not when it's masked as love but fueled by entitlement. Remember this. You are not selfish for protecting your finances. You are wise for knowing when to say no. And you have every right to cut off relationships that drain you and never value you. 3. When they ask you to play the mediator in conflicts that aren't yours. There's a kind of request that seems harmless on the surface, but is one of the most subtle and dangerous traps in any relationship. It's when someone drags you into a conflict that has nothing to do with you and expects you to stand in the middle and fix it. They plead, everything will be okay if you just say something. They beg, Dad, please talk to your brother, the whole family is falling apart. Or worse, if you don't step in, we'll never speak to each other again. And you, out of love, out of a desire to keep the peace, step into the emotional quicksand once again, hoping to calm the storm, while everyone else keeps tossing in more firewood. What happens next? You end up carrying the emotional weight of everyone involved and receive gratitude from no one. If you say one wrong word, you're blamed. If you lean toward one side, you're misunderstood. If you try to stay neutral, you're accused of not taking a stand. In short, you can't win. And the price? Mental exhaustion. The deep weariness that comes from fighting battles you didn't start. You trade away your peace in an attempt to patch up relationships that are already broken at the root. And the worst part, your own family, the ones you love the most, turn you into a tool for their selfish tug of war. They don't want resolution, they want someone to blame. And you, so used to being the peacemaker, become the perfect sacrifice. But you need to remember this. You are not responsible for healing what others keep breaking on purpose. You are not the referee of a game you never even wanted to watch. And if standing in the middle costs you your peace, then it's no longer worth it. You've reached the stage of life where peace is more valuable than being right. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to save anyone. You just need a life quiet enough to hear your own voice, not everyone else's shouting. So if someone asks you to step into a conflict that's not yours, pause and ask yourself, am I helping them or am I hurting myself? And if the answer weighs heavy on your heart, don't be afraid to step away and close the door. You're not abandoning anyone, you're choosing to live. 4. When they ask you to change who you are to make them comfortable. Some demands don't sound disrespectful at first. They come wrapped in gentle advice, sweet suggestions that sound like they're for your own good, but underneath, there's a hidden message. Stop being yourself. Be who they can tolerate. Maybe you've heard things like, "Dad, the way you dress is kind of weird." "Mom, don't listen to that old music, it's so outdated." "Why are you so introverted?" People don't live like that anymore. Harmless as they may sound, over time these comments chip away at your sense of self. They don't say it directly, but you can feel it. Your presence, your voice, your preferences, your values make them uncomfortable. And instead of accepting you, they begin to push for you to upgrade, to change, to stop being so stuck in your ways, not because it's good for you, but because it makes them feel better. But pause for a second and ask yourself, why should you, someone who has lived long enough to know who you are, have to change just to make someone else more comfortable with your identity? You haven't come this far just to start doubting yourself. You don't need anyone's permission to wear what you want, enjoy what you love, or live how you choose. And you are under no obligation to become a lifeless version of someone else's ideal. The truth is, if someone demands that you give up who you are to maintain a relationship, then the price you're paying is you. And no relationship is worth that. You've weathered enough to know what gives you peace. You've built a life full of values, habits, and experiences that are uniquely yours. No one has the right to take that away just because you're not easy to digest. This is not about fashion or music or how you speak. This is about whether or not you still have the courage to be yourself. Because if you keep chipping away at who you are to keep others happy, one day you'll look in the mirror and no longer recognize who's looking back. And by the time others finally approve of who you've become, you will have lost the one person whose approval mattered most, yourself. So if someone, whether it's your child, your spouse, or a relative, asks you to change for the better, listen. But ask yourself, is this coming from love or control? Because real love always comes with respect. And if someone can't accept you as you are, then maybe the change you truly need is to break free from their influence. 5. When they expect you to prioritize their emotions over your own. This demand is rarely spoken outright. No one will ever say, "My feelings matter more than yours." But you'll feel it in their tone, their expressions, and in guilt-laced phrases like, "If you do that, I'll be heartbroken. If you say no, I'll be disappointed for the rest of my life. If you don't agree, I'll feel abandoned." This isn't communication, it's emotional manipulation. A tug of war where your needs are always pulled beneath theirs. And sadly, if you're someone who's responsible and empathetic, you're especially vulnerable to this trap because you're used to stepping back to keep the peace. But have you noticed? That step back keeps getting longer until you no longer have a way back to yourself. You stay silent when you should speak. You say yes while your heart says no. You compromise when you should be standing your ground. And in the process, you lose the most important thing of all, your own honest emotions. Eventually, you begin living like a background character in your own life, there to comfort others, to soothe their wounds while your own needs are quietly dismissed. Ask yourself, why am I always the one managing everyone else's emotions? Why do I feel guilty just for having my own desires? And why, every time I choose something for me, does someone accuse me of being selfish? The answer is simple. They've gotten used to having their feelings prioritized, and they don't want to give up that privilege even if it means you have to suffer. But here's the truth you need to remember. Your feelings matter. They deserve to be heard. They deserve to be protected. You are under no obligation to live in a way that makes others comfortable if it means constantly abandoning yourself. You have the right to say, I'm not okay with this. You have the right to set boundaries. And you absolutely have the right to walk away from any relationship that makes you feel small every time you're honest about your emotions. Love is not sacrificing your emotional well-being to maintain a fake sense of peace. Love is when both people are allowed to be themselves and still feel accepted. So if someone consistently asks you to ignore your feelings to protect theirs, that's no longer a request. That's emotional occupation, and you have every right to cut it off. 6. When they ask for forgiveness but show no remorse. There's a kind of request that sounds noble, but hides a cold and selfish core. Can you forgive me? Without a sincere apology, without real change, without even the slightest hint of regret. Strange, isn't it? They hurt you with their words, their actions, or their years of neglect. And then, when it's convenient for them, they come back and ask you to let it go so everything can go back to normal. But normal for who? For them, not for you. Because the one who was hurt is you. The one who had to fake a smile and say, "It's okay," is you. The one who carried invisible wounds from one betrayal to the next is you. Forgiveness, when it comes from a healthy place, is powerful. But when it's driven by guilt, pressure, or fear of confrontation, it's not forgiveness. It's silent self-destruction. You forgive, but they don't change. You forgive, but they repeat the same behavior like nothing ever happened. You forgive and find yourself back in the same place, hurt, alone, and abandoned again. They're not seeking reconciliation. They're seeking an easy escape where you do all the emotional heavy lifting and they get to walk away without ever facing themselves. And if you say no, you're labeled as bitter, unforgiving, hard-hearted. But look closer. Forgiveness is not a moral obligation. It's not a free pass that lets people avoid the consequences of their actions. You can forgive without keeping them in your life. You can release the anger while still maintaining distance. And you have every right to say, "I forgive you," to free myself, but that doesn't mean I'll give you another chance to hurt me. If someone demands your forgiveness without showing a single sign of remorse or growth, they're not seeking healing. They're seeking permission to stay in your life without ever being held accountable. So if you're standing at the crossroads between protecting your self-worth and once again forgiving someone who's never changed, remember this. Someone who truly loves you would never put you in a position where you're forced to forgive the same pain over and over again. And if they aren't sorry, you owe them nothing. You only owe yourself peace. 7. When they ask you to stay silent to protect them. This is one of the most dangerous kinds of requests, not because it costs you time, money, or emotions, but because it demands something far deeper. Your voice. Your dignity. Maybe they've done something wrong. Maybe they hurt you, lied to you, disrespected you, or worse, harmed someone else. But instead of taking accountability, instead of apologizing or making it right, they turn to you and say, "Don't talk about this, help me save face. Don't make a big deal out of it. If people find out, it'll be messy. Keep quiet for the sake of the family." Sound familiar? You didn't make the mistake, but now you're expected to protect their reputation, even if it means burying the truth, silencing justice, and suppressing your own voice. And if you resist, you'll be called the troublemaker, the betrayer, the one who's ruining the peace. But ask yourself honestly, who is really causing the damage, the one who did wrong or the one who dares to speak the truth? Who's truly betraying the family, the one living by conscience or the one shifting their moral burden onto someone else? Remember this. Silence isn't always wise. Sometimes silence is complicity. When you stay quiet to protect someone who's hurt you, you're teaching yourself, my voice doesn't matter. My truth has no value. My pain can be hidden if it helps someone else feel safe. But you weren't born to cover up someone else's wrongdoing. You don't owe anyone the role of their moral shield. And you have every right to say, I won't stay silent to protect someone who won't take responsibility for their own actions. Your silence might protect them, but it will destroy you from the inside. It kills your trust. It kills your sense of safety. And it slowly makes you question your own sense of right and wrong. That's not peace, that's spiritual suffocation. So if someone asks you to keep quiet for their comfort, look them in the eye and say, I choose truth. I choose self-respect. I choose myself. Because someone who truly loves you would never ask you to carry the weight of their moral failure. You've just heard the 7 types of requests that if anyone makes of you, you should never hesitate, never doubt. Just walk away. Not because you're harsh, not because you lack compassion, but because you've been through enough, sacrificed enough, endured enough to finally understand. Peace is not negotiable. And respect is a boundary, not a suggestion. Yes, some people will call you selfish. Some will say you're ungrateful, cold, or heartless. But they don't live in your body. They don't hear the weight in your chest at night. They don't know how much you've had to swallow just to keep the peace. And the truth is, you've tried hard enough. You've given more than enough. And now it's time to save what's best for yourself. You don't owe the world your shoulders. You don't need to prove your worth through endurance. And you certainly don't need to lose yourself just to hold up someone else's life. You have the right to say no. You have the right to walk away from anyone who only takes, never values. And you have the right to live a life where your peace is no longer up for negotiation. Remember this. You don't have to apologize for setting boundaries. You only need the courage to hold them. And if this video stirred something in you, a thought, a conflict, or a long overdue decision, let this be your moment. The moment you choose differently. The moment you choose yourself. Your dignity. A life where you never have to bow your head just to be loved. Leave a comment below if any part of this video spoke to you. And if you'd like more healing, empowering content like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Because the journey back to peace begins with one small but powerful choice. The courage to face the truth and to stand with yourself.